Given all that is occurring in our nation relevant to race relations and its impact academically, socially, and emotionally on all students, the purpose of this show is not to admire problems. It is, however, to shine a spotlight on any and all issues that directly or indirectly impact public education. Welcome to Education Real Talk with Dr. Sonya Whitaker.
I'd spend some time on my first show giving you some background about myself so that you may gain a sense of the lens by which I view the world. With regards to my academic preparation, I am very humbled to share that I have 25 years of experience in the field of public education. I've served as teacher, assistant principal, director of literacy, director for academic improvement, superintendent of schools, and deputy superintendent of schools. I've served in large districts and small districts, districts serving majority poor students, and districts serving majority affluent students. These experiences and others have contributed to my development and growth. I'd like you to take just a moment to look at the brief video presentation which highlights a few of my absolute favorite career moments.
In the most turbulent of times, it becomes even more important to come together. IASA proudly presents its 53rd annual conference. Dr. Sonya Whitaker is known for culturally responsive classrooms, something that is critically important given the demographics of Illinois today.
You will not only develop the 6 core competencies, but that you will be able to, when implemented with fidelity, improve the academic achievement levels of the diverse population of students that you serve.
What I think is most important that I share now is my why. With all that I've got going on, why am I engaged in equity work at the level in which I'm doing so? It is the direct result of an experience that I had as a school principal. The experience that I am sharing with you actually changed me. As a building principal in the northwest suburbs of Illinois, I had a teacher call down to my office and she told me that there was a child in her class that was kicking and screaming. He was completely off task. And as a result, she wanted to bring him to the office. Now, I had a great deal of faith in this experienced teacher, and I knew that if she was bringing him to the office, that she had definitely done all that she could do to support him. I had so much faith in this teacher that before the student actually made it down to the office, I had already called his mother and asked her to come and pick him up. While the student was in the office, I walked out to talk with the teacher in an effort to gain more information about what had actually occurred. Upon completing my dialogue and conversation with her, I walked back in the office and I noticed that the student had gotten out of his seat and was now standing at the desk and talking with the secretary. I, of course, reminded him of the instructions that he had been given and then directed him to once again have a seat. At the end of the day, the secretary pulled my coattail and she said, "Dr. Whitaker, do you want to know what that student asked me?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "When you walked out of this office, he immediately got out of his chair. He looked me square in the eye and he asked, 'Is there anybody in this school who can teach me how to read?'" You see, that moment changed me. At that moment, it did not matter to me that people called me Dr. Whitaker. At that moment, the only thing that mattered was that there was a child on my watch who was dying to matter. And as far as I am concerned, he had made up in his mind that he was going to be good at being good, or he was going to be good at being bad, but he was going to be really, really good at something. And so I'm sharing all of that to stress the fact that it is now more important than ever in the history of our country that school board members, school district leaders, and school administrators develop the cultural competencies needed to better ensure that all students gain access to a quality education. Cultural competence refers to an ability to interact effectively with people of different cultures and is actually comprised of 4 components, and they are awareness of your own cultural worldview, attitudes toward cultural differences, knowledge of different cultural practices and worldviews, and cross-cultural skills. Now, in an effort to move you one step closer to accomplishing the aforementioned goals, the first episode of this show is entitled A Call to Action, Reconceptualizing the Work of the Racial Equity School and District Leader. Please draw your attention to the next video presentation. In this presentation, I will introduce to you what I refer to as the 6 core competencies deeply ingrained in culturally responsive leaders. 8 minutes and 46 seconds. 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 A call to action, reconceptualizing the work of the Racial Equity District and School Leader. Hi, I am Dr. Sonya Whitaker, educator, national speaker, professional developer, and published author. My area of specialty is specific to providing teachers and educational leaders with a theoretical framework and the necessary training for identifying and actively addressing racial inequities. What I have come to know and believe to be true is that the best way to unite a divided nation is by addressing the racial inequities that exist in our country's educational institutions. In pursuit of this belief, I have produced this video presentation in which I will speak for just under 8 minutes and 46 seconds for the purpose of assisting you in identifying and preparing to launch the type of professional development, virtual and/or in-person, necessary to aid you and your staff in more effectively developing comprehensive plans of actions that will allow you to achieve your intended outcomes. I will accomplish this goal by first introducing to you what I have developed and referred to as the 6 core competencies deeply ingrained in culturally responsive leaders, and they are knowledge of culture, knowledge of culturally responsive pedagogy at the district level, knowledge of culturally responsive pedagogy at the school and instructional levels, the ability to identify and resolve cultural conflicts, the ability to ensure the development and implementation of a racial equity plan, and political will. In my estimation, any and all training in this area must encompass all aspects of the framework that I have developed. The 6 core competencies introduced in the framework, backed by sound research in each area, serves as theoretical justification for the work that must be done in our nation's schools. As you've seen, I have clearly identified the 6 core competencies deeply ingrained in culturally responsive leaders. The goal of this show is definitely not to admire problems. The goal of this show is actually to identify problems which serve as counterproductive to your commitment to making all decisions with the goal of achieving equity in mind, and then to provide viewers with recommended plans of action which can be tried and proven and then replicated throughout schools across our entire nation. Now, with that being said, it is important to pause for just a moment and take a look at how far have we come as a nation as it relates to ensuring that all students have equitable access to a quality education regardless of their zip code. Right now, there's a lot going on in our nation. We are in a period of crisis related to the spread of the coronavirus. In fact, I'd argue that we're experiencing two pandemic outbreaks. One is related to the spread of COVID-19, and the other is related to the intense, unresolved race relations issues that exist in America today. And so I would like to go back and pose my initial question. And that question is, how far have we actually come?
What is happening in K-12 education during the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic? There is a lot we still don't completely understand about various aspects of this pandemic. What we do have a better handle on, however, is what is happening in K through 12 education as of this time. I would like to make an attempt to talk about this through the lens of America's most vulnerable students and their families. What we already knew is that prior to this outbreak, there were huge disparities in the educational opportunities made available to Black and Brown students when you compare their schooling experiences to that of their peers. In other words, the academic achievement gap already existed, and in this space that we're in right now, relevant to the pandemic outbreak, the gap is widening. This pandemic outbreak has put a spotlight on the inequities that already existed in our system, and some would argue that it has been by design. In 1954, Brown versus Board of Education via the U.S. Supreme Court ruled segregation in schools as being unconstitutional. Now, it's important to pause, if only for just a moment, and recognize the fact that just a year ago marked the 65th anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education. And as a direct result, educators and researchers and scholars from all over the country came together for the purpose of answering one question. And that question was, how far have we come? And the results are devastating. It's now time to pull the sheets off of the bed of America's very current reality. And that reality is that in 2020, America's schools have resegregated.
Seeing as America's schools have indeed resegregated, we must remain cognizant of the need to develop a deeper level of understanding as it relates to culture. Now, there are hundreds of definitions that I can provide for you related to the term culture, but the one that I've developed and the one that resonates in my spirit is as follows. Culture is the air you breathe. It is who you are. It is the impact of your childhood experiences, both positive and negative, and it is related to the manner in which those experiences impact how you interact with your colleagues, students, and their parents. At the leadership level, our cultural experiences impact how we interact with others, how we develop policies, and how we implement practices. At the classroom level, teachers' cultural experiences impact their delivery of instruction and their assessment of the intellectual capabilities of the students that they serve. In setting the stage for our continued work in this area, it is important to recognize that the first step toward developing cultural competencies is knowledge of self-culture. Therefore, I'd like to invite you to visit my website at SonyaWhitaker.com. In doing so, you will gain direct access to my DVD series, which is entitled The Culturally Responsive Teacher: How Understanding Culture Positively Impacts Instruction and Student Achievement. You will want to consider using this resource to guide you and your staff in the process of engaging in an activity designed to assist you in creating a safe environment for discussing your cultural background, and the extent to which your cultural experiences cause you to engage in implicit bias. Zaretta Hammond shares with us in her book entitled Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain that implicit bias refers to the unconscious attitudes and stereotypes that shape our responses to certain groups. Implicit bias operates involuntarily, often without one's awareness or intentional control, which is actually different from explicit racism. She adds, why we engage in implicit bias is rooted in neuroscience and is related to our brain's effort to process large amounts of incoming data by using a shortcut we know as stereotyping. While on my website, you may access and purchase a copy of my first book entitled, Is There Anybody Who Can Teach Me How to Read? Practical Strategies for Dramatically Improving Student Learning. On pages 20 and 34 of my book, you will find a script for engaging your teachers and students in the Getting to Know Your Culture activity. Until next time, in the words of Maya Angelou, I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel.